Today we're going to look at how to emulate the majority of Sega's 8 and 16-bit libraries, including Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Master System, Game Gear, and 32X. So first thing we are going to need is, of course, Retroarch, and you can get that at retroarch.com. Click on the download button, scroll down here to nightly builds, because that is going to have a lot of bug fixes, stability, a bunch of added features compared to the stable release. It might also introduce a couple of bugs, but honestly, if that happens, just go back a previous build. So we are going to go ahead and choose Windows. It takes a while to load for me. There we go. We're going to choose the 64-bit version. And then we are going to scroll down to retroarch.7zip and download it. If you don't want to have to use 7zip, you can also download the setup.exe. This will automatically extract it to whatever directory you set it to. This might be a better choice for a lot of people nowadays. So pick your flavor, and then just click on it to download it. And if you do get an error when you try to run Retroarch for the first time, just download this redistributable and you will be all set. You can download the zip or the executable for that as well. Once you have Retroarch download, go ahead and extract it and get it set into the directory that you want it to before you run it for the first time, because it once again defaults all directories to itself in the folder of your choosing. So if you put it on your desktop, it's always going to look to the desktop for all of these folders. So this is my same Retroarch folder I've been using for the last few videos. I didn't feel like downloading a new one today, but go ahead and launch it. For today's tutorial, we're actually going to be using two Sega Genesis cores. So go to Online Updater, Core Updater, and we're going to scroll down to the Sega section here, past all this Nintendo. My goodness. So yes, we are going to get both Pico drive and Genesis Plus. Now the reason behind this is that Genesis Plus is way better at emulating Genesis, Sega CD. It can also do Mega Drive and Game Gear games, but it can't do 32X, whereas Pico Drive can do 32X. So honestly, we are using Pico Drive pretty much exclusively for 32X games, because Genesis Plus is just better at everything else. Once you have that downloaded, go ahead and go to Show Desktop menu, because we are going to get our Sega CD BIOS set up for our emulator. So go ahead and click on this. We are going to do a new playlist. We're going to name it Sega CD. We're going to tell it to have an associate core of Genesis Plus GX. And then we are going to add a file. So we're gonna name it what we want, and we're gonna tell it to open with Genesis Plus, and this is the Sega CD. So now we can see exactly what files we need and what they need to be named to get them to work properly in Retroarch. Alternatively, you can still go to the documents page on the Retroarch website, but I find this to be just so much more reliable. As you can see, we need to name our BIOS_CD_U.bin to get this to work inside of Retroarch. So we do have our Sega CD BIOS right here. So we'll go ahead and open our system folder. And we need to rename it BIOS_CD_U. _U.bin. And it is good to go, so let's just go ahead and drag that right on in. And now when we click out of that and click in, it's good to go, and it's detected properly. So now we are ready to play Sega CD games. This is the only one that is difficult to get set up for this emulator, thankfully. So once you have that done, it's pretty much downhill from here. Now we can go ahead and get things set up for our other Sega systems as well. We don't need any BIOS files for Game Gear, Master System, Genesis, or 32X. So we can just go ahead and make new playlists for each of those. So you might be asking yourselves why I'm showing you the playlist method for this tutorial. It's quite simple really, since we do have to use two separate emulators. It's easier just to use the playlist menu rather than having to remember to manually select which emulator you want every time. So this way, you're getting it configured once and you're done. So once you have your playlist made, I'm just going to add one game to each system for the moment, just so we can get the file associations done right. If you have more games, you're obviously going to want to add all of them. But for me, I'm just doing one at a time. Once again, for people that are wondering, Genesis games, 32X games, Game Gear games, Master System games can all be in zip format, whereas your Sega CD games do need to be typically in bin.q format, bin/q. So go through, select Genesis Plus GX for Game Gear, Genesis, Master System, and Sega CD. And now for Sega 32X, when we add our file, we are going to choose the Pico drive core, and we are all set. Some Sega 32X games do require the use of the Sega CD add-on, like Night Trap, Scottie Pippen, and Corpse Killer, I believe that was the name. So thankfully, Pico Drive uses the same naming scheme for the Sega CD BIOS, so you don't have to worry about having two of them in there for those specific games. But once you have all of your playlists set, you can go ahead and test them out by double-clicking on them and running them. Once you have them all tested and they're working, go ahead and close out of your playlist, your desktop menu if you're finished. And if you go back into Retroarch proper, you can see, well, actually you have to restart Retroarch obviously, but go ahead and reboot Retroarch. And you can see that you now have new playlist entries for all of your systems. Now that you've made sure that all of your games are working properly, we can go ahead and start messing around with shaders. Yes, we are to that part of the tutorial already. So, the Genesis is an interesting console in the fact that it couldn't easily really do transparencies. So, most games use dithering to give the illusion of transparency, where it alternates pixels of the objects. So as you can see here in Sonic, that is not a transparency, it is just a trick where it just renders every other pixel. So the Genesis utilized its composite video output to kind of blend these pixels together to make it have the illusion of a true transparent effect. But in emulation, since you're able to have razor sharp pixels, you can see the trick in for what it is. Like, you can see that this is just obviously every other pixel, it's not true transparency. But using shaders, we can correct this if you want that real authentic feel to the game. You don't have to, of course. You don't need this if you don't want it. It's completely optional, but it is the way the game is meant to be played. Scrolling down to load shader preset. Go down to CRT. And scroll all the way down until you get to CRT Royal. And we are going to choose the composite one. Now, be warned, this is going to make it look really hideous, but also very authentic. So go ahead and select that, and then press F1 to back out, and there you are. You are now greeted with a pretty decent representation of what it feels like to play this on a CRT using composite video. It still doesn't have all of the composite video artifacts. It is emulation, so it's not perfect, but that's for the best, honestly. Like, this is pretty like dumbed down compared to what you could do with an emulator for image quality, but for those of you looking to play your games on an emulator and having them look like they did back in the day, this is not a bad representation. But honestly, this isn't really for me. So I just prefer going with the easy scanline mode. So for me personally, I prefer just using CRT easy mode. Gives me nice scan lines, but retains the sharp picture quality of the emulation. So I really don't mind the pixelated dithered look personally. But if you do, that's up to you. Regardless of it, whether or not you choose to use shaders or not, always make sure that you save your core preset in your shader menu when you are finished, so that way whenever you load up your emulator, it will load up the shader with it, as well as saving the core override. So everything you set for that core will automatically load every time you load it up. Won't matter if you switch between any other core or not, you are good to go. And there you have it. Most of Sega's 16 and 8-bit libraries are now available for you on Retroarch. If you do have any questions, as always, let me know down in the comments below. But don't ask me where you can get ROMs, because I am not going to tell you anything other than dump your own. So, now that we got that out of the way. Anyway, thank you so much again for watching these tutorials. It means the world to me that you guys support the channel. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that sub button, notification bell, dislike button, depending how much you like this video, if you found it helpful. And guys, thank you all so much again. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say, so go play your games, have a great day. We will see you all back next video.